Okay, here we go with the critique for the focus stack. This was an interesting assignment, and I did notice that most of you treated it almost purely as a technical assignment. So the question of whether or not you actually accomplished a set of stacked focuses to gain apparent depth of field is answered, for most of you at least, pretty much yes, you did that. So there isn't a whole lot to say in a technical way. And the problem is that a number of the shots were simply technical shots that were kind of boring. So I'm going to skim through these pretty fast. I thought it might take us a couple of parts to get through it, but we may be able to do this in one quick section because it looked like you got the technique down. Now all you have to do is get down the part where you learn what to shoot when you're doing this. So let's leap into this. So our first shot is a nice grayscale black and white of a great old camera, the Canon AE1. This was a flagship for Canon for a long time. I'm assuming from this and based on the files that were included that you have stacked this out of several shots. You've done a really pretty good job. The only thing to note on here is it looks like that it missed this one. The automatic stacking may have missed this stuff in the middle. So what you need to do when you're doing a focus stack, and we'll see a couple of others the same way, the software is good, but it's not perfect. And you may have to go back and look at some areas and say, did it get those or not? And if it didn't, then what you want to do is go with a layer mask, go to that layer that's got the right stuff, and just erase through and make sure you get it. It's a pretty simple fix. So this one works pretty well. Let's go on. Here we have a nice garden scene. Again, based on the single files you gave me, you were able to do a stack from foreground to background, deep in the weeds down in here. The picture itself certainly needs some attention compositionally. You've got these beautiful deep red flowers and lots of this space around them, and actually more distracting than that is this blown out leaf here. This would be the kind of thing to shade. Frequently we need to bring in a reflector to fill in an area. In this case, you need to shade an area. What a number of photographers have done is go and buy, or have your mother or lady friend show you what they are, get a large embroidery hoop and just put some screen in it, screening material. The sun, or whatever the light is cut back by about a half stop. You can add some scrim by adding layers of screen or other material, and it lets you selectively control areas like this blown out section, and it makes it work pretty well. This is so far blown out, there's not much we could do with it in post. But again, the stack worked pretty well. Well, this one cracked me up because I have no idea what it is or where it is. I'm guessing from the building behind it, almost looks like a museum building. What a bizarre sculpture. But it would be the kind of thing you could do your own shot on, your own story on, other than the fact that you're, of course, commandeering somebody else's artwork for your artwork. But again, the focus stack worked. You got everything from this foreground area in here to the background area. So I can't fault that very much. But the picture leaves a lot to be desired. At least trim this part off. Jeez, I mean, if this is your subject over in here, then you don't need all of this. This shot, again, shows a good use of focus stacking relative to these chess pieces. But it also shows up the problem we talked about with that very first one. Sometimes the stacking software screws up. And here's a good example. We've got stuff going foreground to back fairly sharp, but it's missing some of this. It gets sharp here, then it's out of focus, then it's sharp again. So there are going to be times, if you're doing a stack, where you need to go back through it and, using the right layers, pull in the parts that you need to make it all sharp. Because this is an optical impossibility to have something that goes sharp, soft, and it really jumps out at the viewer. So be prepared for those. Check over the finish stack very carefully before you toss everything out of register and go away. Here's a nice jewelry detail, almost a macro shot with the pin, and I assume this is a bracelet, and using those for the stack. It's nicely done. As a jewelry shot, you need to learn one of the things the lighting class deals with, which is if you have a polished object that's like a mirror. In this case, it's gold, but it's mirror polished. You can't light it. All your lighting here, and you can see it, are the little scratches and maybe some dust and dirt that's on the barrel of this pen. What you can light is what's being reflected in that pen. So to do a shot like this, what you would do is, outside of the picture area, bring in a white card or a reflector or something and light that, move it around till it fills this with light, and then that's the way you would put that light in there. Wow, a really complex focus stack. We missed the very front item, it looks like, but the rest of it is really pretty well done. This is, I have no idea whether the color is right on this. It reads really yellow, but the stack is a good one. It's a complex shot, but again, you don't need all of this stuff. Your shot is in here. There's probably at least 2, maybe 3 shots inside this shot. Your job is to find them and upload them. If you're submitting this to a juried thing, it's not the job of the judge or the juror to find the shot inside your shot. So that's your job. And it's also going to be your job when you're submitting stuff for me. This one's pretty cute. You missed a little on these borders, but that's just a slight trim job. That's not a big deal. All of the Mickey stuff, the Mouse Club stuff, and the monster looking through the window. Except he's got a big grin on his face, and he seems to be friends with Mickey. And who knows, maybe he picked the flowers, or he was the one with the nerve to steal them out of a neighbor's yard. And Mickey can now bring them to Minnie. This is cute. And it is a successful stack. You got virtually everything in focus. What you could have trimmed off is this bizarre piece right here, and then straightened up this edge of the mirror so that you're not getting just this little sliver of stuff off to the side. I really don't know what to do with this one. If this really is a focus stack with multiple shots, all in perfect register, then the only thing I can think of is this cat is either stuffed or drugged to lay still for all of those shots, and not so much as twitch a whisker or an eyebrow that are in perfect registration in all of these. If you actually pull that off, consider me very impressed. If not, maybe we need a different run at this. Again, another good focus stack that's looking through all of the spokes and details of this bicycle into the back. We didn't make it all the way to the back, but you got quite a ways. And when I looked at the single shot, it's pretty shallow. So this worked. You did a good job. It's a really confusing shot as to all of this stuff in here. There's an interesting possibility in here with all of this design rating out from the center spindle and axle on this wheel. The rest of this really adds mostly to the visual confusion that's in it. But the focus stack worked. Well, this one faked me out when I saw it, because I first thought that what I was looking at was the helm of maybe a little fishing trawler of some kind, till I realized, wait, those are fence posts, and that's another building behind it. So either the thing has just hit the rocks and is gliding through the town, or that's a nice old ship's wheel in somebody's back patio or backyard or something. It's a nice shot. it does definitely work as a stack, except the background isn't all that sharp since it's a completely separate part of this shot, spatially and tonally. You could have adjusted your exposure for this shot. This is one of those very unique stacks where you can do that. Or you would have had to make an HDR or an exposure blend for it. But this appears to work. I'm not sure how far back the stack goes, but I give you credit for an effort on it anyway. Another nice stack that is properly selective. I think it works well that you let this whole background go out of focus. The stack in here with this particular part of the flowers works well. Boy, those are deadly. You wouldn't want to fall into that in your undies and skimpies. That'd be a most unpleasant experience. So the stack worked pretty well. Again, where's your shot? Your shot is right here. We don't need all of this in order to properly compose the real photograph. So learn to move in. You can get closer. Or if that fails and you don't have a zoom lens or a longer lens, then shoot very carefully, focus very carefully, and crop it in the post-production phase. You're allowed to do that in my class. So really look for that shot within the shot and give me that, not everything else. Wow, do we have a saturation issue here? The flowers here are beautiful, but this magenta color is just blinding your sensor. We might be able to bring that down a little by going into Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, and picking magentas. Now, we haven't changed the exposure, but we've put a whole lot more detail in those flowers with very little. We can bring the tone back up. And now, here was our original all blown out. Is it as rich in color? No, but we've got detail. Once we've got the detail in it, save that. Then you can go back. Then you can go back and add a little saturation back to the magenta without destroying all the detail. But the camera sensor doesn't know how to deal with all of that. Reds, magentas, those are the worst. You're going to have trouble with those no matter what. And again, I understand it's a focus stack. I get all of that. Heck, I assigned it. But there's some of this we don't need. Our shot, again, is in here. Nice little plant in the jar. If I hadn't seen the single file that you sent along with it, I'm not sure I would have thought of this as a focus stack. But the file showed me that, in fact, it was. And you let the background go. It looks crooked. I don't know if this is a windowsill or what. But this horizon does not line up with this pot's horizon. And that's a problem. It could be nothing more than camera angle. But when you're shooting it and you've got a strong implied horizontal line, you've really got to pay attention to it. Now, I know that I'm giving you guys a huge amount to pay attention to in these little critiques and demos. I understand that. Unfortunately, that's what makes the good photographers, are the ones who can learn to pay attention to all of those stunningly trivial appearing details, because when they're added up and put into a shot and they don't work, an otherwise very nice shot simply falls apart. So again, we could crop this. This would be much nicer without all of the rest of this. When you've got in your figure-ground relationship, this is figure, this is ground. When you've got as much or more ground as you have figure, there needs to be a reason for it. And that reason has to be that it's a major support element for the figure. When you're doing selective focus and that figure or the ground area is just out of focus color blobs, it needs to be cut way back. Ah, the violin again. I'm assuming this is the same violin that we saw in a previous shot, and this time with a dried out sunflower head. Interesting juxtaposition. Again, focus stack works, but by placing this where you did, it becomes a little bit static. Since you've cropped off the violin itself, then it's quite possible we could crop this way down. And make for a more pleasing, detailed composition of one shape against another. It's possible. I'm not sure these are the right subjects to do it with, but it's a good start. Appreciate that you really tried to make this work. Well, we had a shot a little bit ago of a lemon tree with 3 lemons on it. Are these the lemons from that tree that are just a little riper? Again, the focus stack has worked perfectly. In this case, it's also worked a little bit against you because it has made the background very sharp. And the background has far more detail and is more confusing than the foreground. So all of this stuff back here is beginning to fight the lemons, especially since they are on this plain white surface. So again, I know it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to take care of. It's one of the reasons that I keep suggesting you put your cameras on a tripod. Look through that viewfinder, see this, see whatever is there, and then stop for a moment and ask yourself, what have I really got there? What is my shot? Where is my shot in that viewfinder? Should I move in? Should I change angles? Should I move out? What should I do in terms of aperture for depth of field or motion if that's an issue? The tripod lets you envision that and make changes without losing the composition that you might have started with. And here's our last one. Again, a very successful focus stack of a really boring object that isn't telling us much about the flashlight. It looks like one of the Cree LED super bright flashlights, but I'm not sure. I don't know what all this is or why it's in there, because it's certainly getting in and taking away from the flashlight. Not that there's much there, shooting it from the rear end as you did, and including all of this. Take this figure and compare it to all of the rest of this, which is just ground. It's just negative space. So this is your positive space. All of the rest of this is negative. It's just too much, especially since it's got some bizarre stuff in it. This would almost be better if you had gotten rid of all the rest of this stuff, especially whatever this black object is that we're here. I'm going to give you a very quick look at this. I am not going to make a really carefully done mask, so there's going to be some problems with it, but hopefully it will show you what I'm talking about. I've already missed half of this. Obviously, if you were going to do this at all, you would want to take much more time. Now, because that's the mask, or the selection, that's the only place I can put anything. Should have been a little more accurate with it, but you'll get the idea here. At least in this case, once we've lost all of that distraction, we can now concentrate on the flashlight. far better than we could before. So think about what you're shooting. Think about what the other elements in the picture are. We're going to harp on this and harp on it and harp on it, that once you've decided on the major element, whatever it is, everything else in your photograph, everything else, ought to, in the perfect photograph, support or enhance that chosen element. What it should never do is distract or dilute attention from it. If it's just neutral, maybe. Still, it'd be better to get rid of it. But if it does anything negative, get rid of it. And in the digital world, as you've just seen, that is so easy. Well, we were able to blaze through all of these. This was the last one that was turned in time for the critique. So I'm going to get this posted and up for you. And then tomorrow we'll leap on the motion stuff. And like I say, hopefully by the end of the week I'll have most of us all caught up here. So catch you later.